Hello, everyone. This is Richard Eaton, your CTEC 134 Database Administration Instructor. This video regards the Week 2 assignments. In Week 2, you've been asked to read Chapter 2 from a Guide to SQL textbook, and also Chapter 2 from the Database Administration Fundamentals textbook. And I've made some lecture notes here to kind of walk us through what we're going to be doing this week and in this video and in some subsequent videos. As you know, I try to keep these videos at 10 minutes or less, so we'll probably have multiple parts here for this. The lecture notes I created are right here. And I have posted these notes on Canvas in Week 2. The Guide to SQL textbook, Chapter 2, deals with design concepts, including primary keys, which we've actually already talked about. But it also talks about functional dependence and normalization. These are concepts that are a bit difficult to understand initially, but we will keep coming back to them over and over the next several weeks. The Database Administration Fundamentals textbook introduces you to a concept called data types. It also introduces you to creating database objects using SQL Server Management Studio. In this video, I want to create a small test database with a table and talk a bit about SSMS and actually writing SQL commands. There are actually several ways to create objects in SQL Server. Using SSMS, graphical userface, using it exclusively actually allows you to create a database without writing a command, and creating a table without writing a command, and entering data without writing commands. But it also has a very brief introduction to how you would actually write an SQL statement to accomplish the same thing. We can use SSMS to actually record, save, and execute SQL commands rather than using the GUI interface for creating those objects. We can actually write SQL commands and execute them. Another way to create SQL commands is use a text editor. Basically, any old text editor would suffice, but you use that editor to create actual SQL commands from within a programming application, and then you call those commands and execute them from within the programming application. We won't do that in this class. What we will do a lot is we will use SSMS to record, save, and execute actual SQL commands. On page 21 through 26 in the Database Administration textbook, it deals with data types, and it goes into quite a bit of detail. In fact, it might be a bit of overkill for this particular class. But while it might be a bit overkill for this class, it is essential knowledge for anyone who is going to become a professional developer. Next week, in a guide to SQL, the chapter presents a much more succinct discussion of data types on page 70. And I think for this class, the more succinct description is adequate, but we're going to talk about that when we build our first database and add our table. So in this class, we'll be focusing on creating SQL commands and saving them for later execution, just like I did in the tal distributors _rick.sql script that I had you open and run in the first week. So for practice this week, we're going to actually start SSOS, create a test database, and add a table to it. And the database that we're going to create, I just made it up on the fly here for this particular lecture. I'm calling it Acme Services, and I want to put a table in it called Employees. And in the employee table, I want to include columns or attributes or fields, all the same thing, for employee number, first name, last name, date of hire, pay rate, and pay type. The standard shorthand notation for this table, as presented in the GSQL textbook, would look like this. Employees is the name of the table. We have a left parentheses, and we have a list of our columns separated by commas. And in the author actually used all uppercase letters, and he used underscores to separate some of the names for readability purposes. And that was a common practice many, many years ago before we had GUI interfaces. And it's not a common practice today. So we're not going to use this particular shorthand. We're going to use an alternate form. And we're going to also follow some specific naming conventions for this class. We're going to use, instead of all uppercase letters, we're going to use upper and lowercase letters with no spaces. And we're going to prefix our objects with 2 or 3 letters to identify what kind of an object it actually is. For example, we would use TBL in front of all of our table objects, or Q or Y in front of our query objects, or VW for our views, and all with no spaces. Here's an example of the shorthand notation that the author uses in the GSQL textbook that I want you to use and that I intend to use throughout this class. I have TBL employees, the name of the table prefixed by TBL, a left parentheses, and then I have the column names, all using upper and lowercase characters for readability, but with no spaces. Notice that the employee number is underlined here. I don't think you can see it very well, but it is. It's underlined right here. And that indicates that this is a primary key. So that's all we're going to do for right now. I'm going to start part 2 of this video, and we're going to use SSMS to create this database in this table and discuss data types. Thank you.